of whatever the fuck I'm doing here. So
Yeah.
so there you go. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Thanks for coming. You want to introduce yourself? We met on the Hippy Dippy recruitment panel yesterday.
Sure.
Was it, it
Yeah,
was
yeah, we
yesterday.
that is correct. Yeah, so my name is Brys, from Canada, Nova Scotia. Um, I just randomly decided since my semester was online that I'll start jumping into these spheres and talk to people and maybe try like debating a few things here and there. And lo and behold, ended up on Hippy Dippy, and
Are
I think
you
it was from. Sorry, go ahead.
are you a professor?
No, I'm not. I retired, basically retired young, and now I'm going back to school for a Bachelor of Science in Economics when I'm going to do
Okay.
a minor in Applied Ethics, and I like psychology stuff too, so I'm taking some of those courses.
Okay. 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 That's a turn. Economics. Sorry, is that what you said? Economics. I was.
Yes.
So what made you take that particular discipline?
Well, numbers and finances has always been, it's like a sort of part of the family trade, you could say, so to speak. And my grandfather was an accountant that was, um, to not like dox myself or do anything, but he was extremely good at what he did, brilliant with numbers, and did a lot in the public sphere that affected a lot of change in like Canada. So I have his book, um, and I would show it on stream, but that would dox me. And
Mhm.
um, reading through it inspired me to get like a greater interest in economics. Since I helped a friend a couple years ago do her PPE degree, or
Mhm.
like her final dissertation version. I shouldn't say help her do a degree. I helped her with her
Yeah. Right.
dissertation,
Sure.
and like reading through a lot of that like course material and like helping her write, and basically just being like the editor and like letting her bounce ideas off me and stuff like that. I realized like, wow, like I really like philosophy and like economics, and like my job is like so much more boring than any of this stuff.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, all
Okay.
those things came together. I was like, fuck it, I need to do something different.
What do you think of the Huh, how do I put this? What's your position on the? I guess what are the two spheres? The MMT versus I guess the hard money uh, dynamic going on online. You have I guess the Bitcoin maxis who are just
Um,
all about that hard deflationary currency. And you got the, I guess I'll call them, for lack of a better term, MMT maxis, who are just like, yeah, let's just spin up money and create the good things that we need out of the world.
so I think MMT is a really interesting idea, interesting theory. I think that some of the things that they say are right, but I don't think that we should take that approach to or operating the economy. I think
Hmm.
um, if we gave them the reins, pretty sure the economy would within like 5 years like just shit the bed. And um,
Don't you? Hold on. First of all, when you say give them the reins, who do you mean?
I mean, if somebody was like, if we had a government that favored MMT style legislation and appointed people to the different feds, like Stephanie Kelton or somebody like her being
Okay.
in like the governor of the different banks,
Hmm.
then I think like that aggregate shit would add up. It would take time. You wouldn't see it like instantly. You know, the moon wouldn't crash into the earth the
Okay.
next day, but within like 5 years, it would probably. And it's, I mean, they're smart people, so I don't know that I would be confident saying that everything would like fall apart. But I
Hmm.
think that you would see the economy suffer big time, and they'd rack up like a shit ton of debt that they would be able to like sell off and manage through a central bank managing the debt. Um, there is a small case you could make for using like Japan and their hyperinflation
Hmm.
situation, but I feel like Japan and Japan's culture,
Hey,
Japanese
Melissa.
economics, it's all really like unique in its own
Okay.
way.
Okay, it's a different environment for that type of approach. Don't you think that I mean, in essence, at least the United States and Canada, for that reason, a few other countries are already basically under some kind of MMT uh, framework.
No, I don't think that's really under like the MMT framework by any means. I think that we have a framework of on like a macro level and doing like more like QE, like quantitative easing. And
Hmm.
we have since I think like 2009, they've done like some different like structuring with regards to quantitative easing and basically like different ways of handling the money supply and the problems of inflation, deflation, stagflation, all hyper like de-inflation,
Mm.
like all the bad things. But I wouldn't say that it's really like MMT because MMT wouldn't really care about the money supply and the monetary policy would be different than what it is now.
Hmm. I mean, I think I kind of think in essence, it's kind of in a way functioning this way. I look at the United States. I mean, there's QE for one, but one thing I guess they had this infrastructure bill, right, that just passed with Biden or something. And I was reading the thing for one of these panels, and it feels like everything's funded through federally guaranteed loans, right? So essentially, banks can make loans. And as long as the projects meet certain criteria set by the federal government, then they'll get these federally guaranteed loans, which essentially removes the risk for the banks, right? So they can just fund all kinds of projects as long as they tick the right boxes, right? And if they fail, or if they fail, then that's fine. The bank doesn't get their money back, but the loan's federally guaranteed. So all the money they lent out is out there in the world, in one form or another, and that's it. They just there's no risk on the bank's part. It's not There's no negative part. It just kind of goes on the books of the Federal Reserve, right? So essentially, some money creation. Right there by the banks, and you're funding what's going to be mostly failure, right? So there's no without any kind of counterparty, without any kind of counterparty risk. So in a way, it's like I feel like there's one good instance of how money creation is already just kind of happening, right? And it bugs me because that kind of supply, or that kind of way to supply things is, tell me if this makes sense to you, because I try to describe this conceptually, and I don't know, some people, maybe it's wrong. Tell me. So if you create this supply, let's say you have the entire economy, and it's represented by the current money supply, right? And then you do a program like this, and the end effect is the same. There's basically there's more supply that magically appears in a certain sector of whatever you're trying to develop, right? So essentially, what you're doing is you're sucking purchasing power from everybody who uses your currency and redirecting it in a way to the sector that you want to develop. Does that make sense?
Um, I'm having a little bit of a hard time following. So you're imagining, so like, um, money
Imagine,
supply, right?
yeah, okay. So
Sorry,
imagine
go
you
ahead.
have you have your entire economy, okay, and
Yeah.
it's represented by the number of dollars, okay, that are in it, and every
Yeah.
dollar represents a small percentile of supply, all of which add up to your entire economy, okay. And now you spin up like a whole bunch of other dollars in one sector, right? Thus, creating more money that those sectors can, those big contractors or whatever, can spend on supplies and people and this and that, which those people can spend on supplies and people, but just putting a pressure on everything else. And so effectively what you're doing is every dollar now becomes a smaller percent portion of purchasing power than they were before, can purchase a little less. So what you're doing is you're sucking like an incremental portion of purchasing power from every single dollar that's out there, right? And then basically redirecting it, okay, into uh, the sector of the economy that you want to fund, right? So,
Yeah. So there's a wiki entry for money supply, and it's pretty good for like a rudimentary like overview of money supply. And you can imagine that when like current economists talk about money supply, they're talking about framed in the sense of like there's a table in here where it's like
mhm,
they break it down to like M0, MB, M one
mhm,
two three four. and
Mhm.
that just M0 covers what you said, like all the money in the
Mhm.
economy, and then M1, M2, M3 are a lot more specialized, different
Mhm.
types of currency that are in the economy.
Mhm.
And so they use that and the different calculations of like
Mhm.
um, how to calculate
Mhm.
um, monetary policy with regards to the. So I mean, like I can understand. I just wasn't sure like what you were asking. Like I do understand um, what you were describing, but
Yeah.
I think
I'm
I was just a
describing
little
as if the thing was not like numbers, but an organism, right?
right.
And it was basically it's taking energy, or it's taking some unit of movement power, right?
Well, I mean,
Please turn on
there's
the
like
light.
taxes. Taxes are like the redistribution of some wealth to like the social programs,
Well,
but then like money to when they do like quantitative easing and the different ways of like bonds and like other ways of where the central banks can inject cash into the market. What they're doing is they're allowing the banks and um,
yeah.
others to yeah, they're basically it's like how do I describe it as like a metaphor? It's like finding an entry point into a swimming pool for to add more water to the overall supply without like water actually watering things down. You are introducing additional amounts of money into the money supply
Mhm.
without causing some kind of like unacceptable level of inflation or other negative impact on the purchasing power parity. And
From what I understand of how I guess the MMT people see that it works is that you have this money supply being created by banks, or by
okay,
whatever means, right? And then the taxes are essentially the opposite of that. Like taxes are basically you take the money, you put it in the shredder, right, and it takes it out of the money supply, right? And effectively that's how the wheel turns and gets funded. Right. I get it's not exactly like that, but
yeah,
really, what
that's
you're doing is you're taking
relatively
supply out
decent.
through taxes, and you're creating more supply through whatever the fuck you're funding, right? Or whatever the fuck QE, federally guaranteed loans, whatever mechanisms you're using to introduce more dollars. Or
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the plus side is it is good for us to basically have that bond system where there's a market for people to be like banks and other institutions like credit unions and so on to be able to buy like the have the bonds and then actually like inject the cash without. I mean, they are kind of like choosing, but then it's not like they well. I mean, there are government subsidies and stuff like that, but in the
Mhm.
context directly of injecting cash into the economy like a central bank does in a lot of our developed countries. Um, you, how do I say it? It's not so much that they're choosing particular industries as they're just saying like we want to. So in like an economic downturn, right?
Mhm.
When they're in moments like a
Yeah.
recession, this is one of the moments where they're like, okay, we want to like inject a bunch of money because there's a slowdown of the general activity of the market, but
Mhm.
because sorry, not but because the slowdown is happening, that means that there's far less economic activity. So they're like,
Right.
okay, hold on, we need to like account for this. We need to in our like calculations, we want to have see like a higher level of activity from the consumers, like the moral
Yeah.
agents, the moral actors. So that those are
Basically,
like one of the main.
there's a slowdown going on, and you need to inject steroids so that the thing keeps moving, so it moves, so
Exactly.
it gets back to a place, right? Do you think this is like a do you think this is a healthy way to manage an organism, right?
Yeah,
To just keep
it's working.
injecting it
Like
with steroids. I mean, you don't think the ebb and flow of things that allows natural systems to adapt to the environment uh, isn't like a good thing that shouldn't be applied to this kind of somewhat complex organism that is our economy. Is what I guess what I'm saying is like you can use this tool to avoid a lot of collapses that maybe should have happened, you know? And
yeah,
I wonder
so
if over the long term that's sustainable or even healthy over the long term. Like short term, yes, just like you take steroids, it's like okay, or even medicine or steroids, like you're recovering from an injury or something like that, right? They give you something to so you can recover well and get back on track. That's the thing. But the but the point of that is that normally you don't constantly have accidents and always take steroids. That would actually be bad for the organism. If you're just always on steroids, you're always using this mechanism. The expectation is to give them steroids so that later you're not on steroids, you know? Um, yeah,
Yeah. So I think that business cycles are like a really important thing that you do learn. And there's a thing that I haven't learned yet. It's good in the course that I'm taking right now. We're going to talk
sure.
about it, but like I'm going to say the guy's name wrong, but solo models.
Okay.
It's like a macroeconomic model that deals specifically with like monetary supply and things like that. So I think that, so to answer you on two fronts, business cycles are really, really valuable, kind of like natural, like what you're describing, like the natural
Hmm. The ebb and
flow of
flow. Sure.
events. And yeah, that natural ebb and flow. Like I think one problem that we've seen in our economies is that not companies, institutions like the SEC and other eh, organizations or like agencies have allowed mergers and acquisitions and other business activity to take place, like getting subsidies or bailouts or whatever to companies that should have just been allowed to die,
Hmm.
because the market itself is still going to exist, but the firm should be allowed to die so that it can be like a phoenix situation, right? Like something can come from the ashes
Right.
of that.
The resources that it was taking up have found an unsuccessful strategy to weather the environment, and it should be allowed to die so that its resources can be redistributed to the other players in the game,
Yeah, and I think
who have
so. I
survived
think
still.
Yeah, and there are definitely like there are some situations where there are legitimate reasons to give subsidy, like research, to maybe bail out somebody. I think there are extreme situations, like maybe even accounting for this and everything that I'm challenging, criticizing. Maybe even like the 2008, 2009 would be still a legitimate reason to give the stimulus package that we did. And
Really.
obviously COVID. Well, yeah, because that could still be a situation where it's the housing crisis, right? It was the
Hmm.
housing bubble,
Hmm.
and the credit, the credit defaulting, the swapping, all that shit.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like this is not necessarily the exact case that I'm making, because I feel like if you look at Amazon, Microsoft, all these like big companies, these huge like multinational, now transnational companies that are just superpowers in the business
Hmm.
world, they've been able to buy out competition
Hmm.
and negatively affect the market by creating either monopsony or monopoly.
Hmm.
And I feel like a lot of this is also in tandem with getting assistance from the government, and this
Yeah.
creates kind of like an anti-competitive situation where, like I said, don't get me wrong, I do think that there are situations where the government does need to intervene. I do believe in like like semi-regulated markets. Like I don't want like pure like free markets by any means,
Hmm.
but I do think the practice that we've seen in the last like 10, 15 years has been proven to be like like adversely affecting competition.
Yeah. I mean, I think there wouldn't have been 2008 without, I guess, what happened in the 90s or the late 90s, early 2000s. There's a crisis there, and we kind of just, yeah, found some tools to paper over it, right, and just kick the can down the road. We didn't allow collapses to happen, which is any natural system needs collapses to happen for the system to be
Well,
healthy.
y- to an extent, I think what I won't agree on is I don't think that the entire like system should collapse and we shouldn't just let the system collapse. I think firms inside of the system can be allowed to collapse,
Hmm.
and because there is still going to be the market where these firms occupied. And so even
Right.
if you had like what was the one bank? Let's say there's just JP Morgan, right? If JP Morgan
Yeah.
fell apart, there are five other banks that will buy up different parts of it, and even in the aftermath of that, you'll have a new player emerge, right? Like that allows a new player to emerge. Yes, there is the impact of like, this is where I think like government intervention would be good. There'd be the impact of like the people losing their jobs or like things like that. But that's where like the government, all the money that they're funding funneling into these companies to preserve all those jobs, because that's usually what it is. It's like, well, we want to preserve the jobs, preserve
Right.
that company, and
You want
save.
to avoid short term pain.
Yeah,
because
so
that makes you
you
electable. That
yeah,
makes you
yeah, exactly.
electable, but
But the crazy thing is
I feel
all
like
mhm,
avoiding this short-term pain sets you up for bigger collapse in the future because you're still you're basically keeping unfit systems alive, to be unfit, to continuously be unfit another day, right? And then accumulate those unfit systems in, more and more complex, environments that lead to bigger and bigger crashes, or bigger and bigger collapses, to the point where the collapses become so harmful that you have no choice. You have no choice but to keep holding them up. And now you're basically in a race against some kind of clock where eventually you're going to have to accept that this system is going to collapse. You've taken out the counter leverage. That's the wrong term, but you know what I'm saying, right? You've taken out, yeah, that kind of limiting force from your system that makes it grow healthily, and you've essentially turned something into a cancer that's going to eat the body. That, anyways.
yeah. No, for sure. I feel like this is usually one of my contentions with how things are done, because I think there are a lot of like nobody in economics is really um members of schools. Like you don't have like in philosophy, you have people that are like continental philosophers and
Okay, yeah.
like analytic philosophers, and
Mhm.
they might consider themselves to be Kantian or like Marxist
Right.
or like whatever. Whereas in economics, people have generally accepted a ton of Keynes ideas,
Mhm.
and so everyone on some level or another, every economist that practices or like works with in like in that field is on like some level or another like a Keynesian,
Mhm.
um, because we don't have that same like dogmatic. People will throw around like Austrian economics, Chicago,
Mhm.
neoclassical, all that stuff, but it's all kind of irrelevant. Like a lot of this stuff is accepted, and um, that's why I'm comfortable saying like I think it's not like a structural like philosophical problem. I think it's just some we've tried taking particular actions in our systems, and there's not personally I think the systems are great. I think I love like I would not change. I think I would change some of the actions that we've chosen to take inside
Mhm.
of it with regards to everything I just listed, but I would absolutely preserve like everything so far.
Really? All right.
Yep.
As far as economics go, I'm going to end it there. Just, I guess my thought. I'm going to disagree with you in that I think the system that allows for that kind of structuring and kind of being deadlocked into collapse was an unhealthy system to begin with, and it's just structurally flawed. Because at some point, when you have a system that's structurally flawed, eventually someone will abuse it to the point where those triggers will be tripped, and you're it's not a question of if, but when you have something structured like that. um that's You can respond to that in just 1 second. I just got to open the garage door to let the smoke out because I have to light this up. I will be right back.
Yep. No problem.
When you have 4 kids, you get distracted a lot. Also, when you have severe ADHD and 4 kids, you get distracted a lot, and you forget things, and then you have to go get them at the last minute when you have like the stream scheduled and stuff. It's annoying.
Yep. Yep.
um,
I have ADHD as well, so I get it.
really, when did you
Yep.
find out
Um,
or get
I think
diagnosed?
like
I suppose.
24, 25. I was
Okay.
diagnosed pretty late, but I went to the IWK and like clinically diagnosed, did the test for like 2 or 3 hours.
Why'd you decide to get a diagnosis?
Because I struggled with my first degree in like 2008, 2009.
Okay.
Um, I got kind of mediocre grades, which are lower than I know I'm capable of, and every like it
You know.
got really tiresome. I know everybody says they hear this, but like everybody would always tell me like, if you just applied yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. I only found out last year. I'm 40. I'm 40 now. I have 2 degrees from university. I mean, I kind of got through them without studying. My grades weren't amazing, but I completed classes. So there's that. And had and already, I guess, in my second year of university, my first kid was born. So we're trailing that as well. And anyways, it was a bit of a slog, but but we got through it. Got through it. Have a nice house now.
Oh yeah,
4 kids, pretty
wow,
decent. Made a good life out of it. So
that's
so
awesome.
that's it. But found out last year, and honestly, this has been a real eye opener. It's been a real eye opener. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. How about you? Kids? No kids?
nope, no kids.
Nope.
Thankfully, like knock on wood.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Business?
what business? What do you mean? Or like, what do I
Um,
do?
yeah,
Oh,
generally.
so well,
Generally, you don't have to be
previously,
specific. Yeah.
previously I worked in logistics, like ERP, enterprise resource planning. Um, I worked with a company here, and we had some pretty big clients, like through them, and made good money. But it was the most like monotonous, like staring at a
Okay.
spreadsheet all day, like horrible. Did nothing for me. Like I'd say like the lead up to that was sorry, not lead up to that. The results from that were um, going through like a lot of like personal growth because
Mhm,
like doing a job you hate and sitting in front of a computer screen for so many hours and
mhm.
like I have a tendency to do that when I get home anyway. Like you know what I mean?
Got time to do a
It
lot of
takes
thinking.
yeah too much time.
Right.
So I actually was into like I wouldn't say I call it like alt right, but a more like right leaning sphere of the internet for a long time. And
Okay.
yeah, so definitely the decision, like the combination of having some really great friends and making a few public mistakes over the
Okay.
years and
You escaped
all
the
that.
alt-right pipeline.
Yeah, I stopped it before it went too far and
Really? Okay.
learned a lot about myself. Yeah.
What are we talking about alt-right pipeline? Like, we're watching, what's that guy? Milo Yiannopoulos videos? Are
Mm,
we, like
no, so there was a like an internet chat room that was just like the typical like pro Trumpers that would be um, openly racist and really comfortably racist and like sexist and
mhm.
um, you know those
Okay.
types.
Okay, just some
So
toxic
more just
memes,
like
sure.
yeah, like toxic masculinity, like macho, like conservative, generic kind of atmosphere.
Okay.
But it within that, you saw, like, there's still be, like, 1 or 2 people that would be on that more, like, alt-right, like, direction.
Mhm.
Like, it was only, like, 2 steps removed from it, you know, or, like, 1 step removed from it.
Okay, okay. It's, it's difficult living by the high standards of what am I gonna say? Right leaning, meat eating, the fitness having influencers, right? Like, wow,
Yeah.
like this is a lot, and I'm glad it works for you. But fuck, man, dude,
Yeah.
let's see your lifestyle with 4 kids, motherfucker. You know.
True.
I
Yeah,
mean, I have 4 kids, but everyone has their own fucking sets of things. We're not all influencers that just happen to fall into this lifestyle and make
yeah.
money off it. Yeah.
Yeah, so the funny thing is when I really started getting into like Twitch and Discord, I had a friend that I ran into. Him and I, the way that we met was in through somebody's stream, and the first time that we met, we like yelled at each other in a Discord call with like him and some of his friends for like
Mhm.
2 or 3 hours, just like talking shit to each other. And now we're like best friends. Like that guy's probably like a brother to me. Like we're like
Really?
best friends. Yeah. And he when I met him, he was like a communist, like pro Marx, like all that stuff. And when I met him, I was like, "There's a natural order. Like women prefer to be submissive, men should be dominant. Like
Okay.
that kind of like conservative."
Yeah. Right.
And in the what like 2 years, 2 or 3 years that we've known each other, he's pulled away from being like communist and Marxist, and I've like pulled away from
Right.
that. And now I'm like much more in the progressive area.
De-radicalized.
Yeah,
You both
yeah, yeah. We
de-radicalized.
did it. Yeah, we did it to each other.
Oh, okay. I I'm whatever. I label myself on a conservative just because it triggers people, right? Actually, that's not true. It's not that it triggers people. Is it allows me to spot the people who are going to just judge you by that label, right? And go off on fucking thinking that you've said things that you never actually said, nor do you think, right? And then you can spot them and say, okay, well, I don't need to associate with this person because
Yeah,
the label, at least the team sports label that happens on this website, in my estimation, is preposterous. it's
yeah,
it,
it's
it
absurd.
yeah, it is absurd. Like if you need to know what my position is on something, just ask me. Ask me and we can talk about it. I don't usually, and I don't know what you think about this. Do you think it's necessary to have to take a policy position when you discuss something? I know that's a criticism people have about things. Like I don't really have a position on things, and that's deliberate. That's deliberate. There's a reason I don't have a position on things, and I'll share it over the course of this conversation. But what do you think about that?
If you're in the position where your conversation is talking about how things ought to be, or you're making like prescriptions and
Mm,
you're saying like this is what we need to do, and like
mm,
if you're framing your if you're in an argument where you're framing it like that, then I
mm,
think that you should have some kind of like position, because
mm.
from having a position, I think that you should have gotten to that position through like an objective way. And I think
Sure,
from the um, journey of doing so objectively, you will find for whatever reason that you'll have like a position. But um, I guess the other thing is it depends on like how things are important to you, right? Like if something is not directly affecting you or is not like of actual importance to you,
hmm
you could say that it's more difficult to take a position or like a side, or even like a policy idea.
mm. I it's not that things don't affect me or they're not important. It's just I guess I don't feel like I'm smart enough to understand a complex system like what some policy position is dealing with, right? Go this direction or go that direction, right? And I'm like, I don't know enough about the system to make a judgment on that. I'm not going to tell you. That's why I mean if you don't, but if you ever do get the chance to listen to me on whatever panels, it's like I can never tell you what you should do. I think that's obnoxious personally. Okay, but I can tell you what I've done, right? And that's about all I can speak on, like with any authority. And that's why I don't like to take positions on things like that, because I don't know. I don't know, and at least I can discuss them with like here how I feel it. Here are the here are the relationships in play from my perspective, and then people can correct me or whatever. But I'd rather have much more of an exploratory conversation because I don't have that kind of visibility on the system. Okay. Even if I did, without being directly implied, without having my own stake in it, okay, all my anything that I say is honestly bullshit. Okay, because I've never been filtered out by putting my own skin in the game. So so really, for all you know, I'm just spewing bullshit that sounds great, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. And so I can't bring myself to take positions on this because yeah, and the other thing is I don't have any power to affect them. Okay, especially on larger policy positions, they don't care about what I think. Okay, the people making these
Um,
decisions don't really care what I think, in my
I
estimation.
think,
What do you think?
yeah,
Sorry.
I really respect your tendency to, if you don't feel confident in it, or you don't feel like you've done enough research and like self education on it, that I think that's a perfectly good reason to not stake out your claim, so to speak, or to stake your ground. Um, because I think something that really ticks me off a lot of the time is people will be really opinionated about stuff, like
Mm,
especially in these online spheres, especially about stuff like socialism versus capitalism. And
mm,
yet, when you actually engage with them, there is talking points. There's not like critical reading. There's not critical analysis. There's a limited scope of the reading that they've done, or like any, for how opinionated are they are.
mm.
They haven't really gone through like meeting their own like an internal like epistemic standard.
I'll take it even one step further. I think even if they've done an immense amount of studying on the topic, okay, as long as their involvement with the system is purely academic, I still think it's bullshit. I still think it's bullshit because basically you have to, in my estimation, or the way I see this, and you can disagree with me, but in academia, okay, you're going to get accolades based on how much you agree with your peers, right? How much your peers see, like, okay, I like the way this guy thinks, and there's value in what he's telling me here, right? But that's still an evaluation by that specific system, and none of those, and if those academics aren't like, again, not filtered by stake, then really they've just gotten to their position through the same kind of academic circle jerk, citation circle. Then and that's how then it allows them to kind of live in this parallel universe, right? Because nothing real is filtering them out by them having a stake that would eliminate them if they were wrong. So they can continue having ideas that don't necessarily match reality or the complex systems they engage in. Okay, that was a lot. I'll let you go.
Oh, that's okay. I think that there is so the idea of being insular and unreachable because of maybe your tenure or like perceived perception. These things definitely exist, and you can create like echo chambers in academia. But I wouldn't be comfortable making like broad, all-encompassing statements.
Mm,
I think
sure. Yeah.
um,
All academia. Yeah. Yeah, you're
yeah.
right. I have things like that. I'm like, oh, all academics are basically bullshit, and it's like I'm dismissing the entire thing. It's worthless. That's not how I feel. Uh, just so we're
Okay,
clear.
yeah.
Yeah.
So to be charitable to you, I do think that so absolutely there are. When you look at like the online spheres, there are definitely a lot of people that came from academia that went through the processes to graduate to get their degree, but didn't really do a lot of independent thought or like unique thinking because there are different quality of institutions. And I'm not saying like Ivy League, anything like that. I mean, you can have a school like Northwestern, right? Northwestern is probably one of the top economic schools in the world, and you wouldn't expect that.
Mm,
Northwestern is a really good school, don't get me wrong, but to say that they're like probably one of the best economic schools in the world is not what people would expect, right? You'd think they'd say like Harvard. Which those are all the schools are still really good. The
okay.
faculty that they get there, their curriculum, um, all those things are still really good at those schools. But like Northwestern
Mm.
is super high ranked. Like they punch way above their weight class, and you see that in a lot of schools. So you have
How does
a ton of schools.
Northwestern? How would something like Northwestern measure success? You say they punch above their weight. What is success in that realm?
So success generally manifests in just like how like in your work, right? So the in economics, the work speaks for itself because we've got so political economy is still exists. That's still very much a thing, but economics is kind of almost exiting an infancy stage of being like an actual science because
Mm,
when you
but
look at
who evaluates if it's good or not?
peers, like, so
Peers.
a really good example of this, I mentioned it, I think, last night when I was talking to somebody. Um, I was talking to Carter in CTV. So a really, really good example of that is the University of Chicago Money and Banking Workshop. There's a really, really famous case where there's this PhD in math. He ran, what's that guy's? He runs Peter Thiel's investment money.
Mhm.
He manages that firm. So he manages like a
Okay.
hedge fund firm for like billions of dollars. He has a PhD in math. He's like, I've got this idea.
Mhm,
I'm a math guy. I think you're using the wrong kind of calculus and economics. I have this
mhm,
idea.
mhm,
And he went in front of this money and banking workshop where it's
mhm,
literally everybody has like economics PhDs, some math degrees, some stats degrees,
mhm.
but everybody's an economist. And the guy got eviscerated. People like because they're so rigorous, like they are intense, like they don't care about like you as an individual. They're gonna look directly at your work, and they're gonna be completely unforgiving. Like this workshop is known for being brutal. So if you don't have like your I's dotted, your T's crossed in the math, then you're gonna
Okay.
get like so. And it got to
Okay.
the point where like
You have to have
he
great math technique.
yes, you need
Right.
well, it has to be yeah, it has to like the math has to check out, right? Like, no matter, like, what you could have, a
Yeah.
hypothesis being tested or,
Right.
like, a causal inference thing, like difference in difference, like, whatever your
Right. As long as you've applied the system to an excellent degree. This is
Yes,
but
but not
okay.
just that. Like everything else has to add up too. Like the arguments have to be sound. Like you can't be like super outlandish sounding, right? It has to make statistical sense,
Mhm.
mathematical sense, and it has to make sense
Does
of
it have to be
like
tested in the real world?
um no, because economics has a lot of methods for doing like the live experiments and like quasi experiments where you
Okay.
don't have to do the traditional experiment of like testing something.
Well, hold on. What does an experiment look like in economics?
So an experiment is the like LATE is like so there's IPW, inverse probability weighting, which is like a framework for the experiments. Then you have like LATE, which is what does it stand for? Um, sorry, I'm gonna have to look it up.
Late.
Like I said, I'm
All right.
yeah late. Uh,
Yeah, it's fine. If don't worry about it. I'm asking questions
no,
because I'm curious. I want to see what your
yeah,
visibility is on whatever you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, no. So it's local average treatment effect.
Okay.
It's just something like I said, I haven't taken econometrics yet, so
Okay.
it is like I have a cursory understanding of this stuff, but I know that this like I'm in a couple of different economics discords where a lot of people that are like either postdoc or like
Oh yeah.
current candidates. So I talk to people that are like doing and like living this. So I have a general idea,
Yeah. Okay.
but
I gotta get you. I
more
gotta get you in a room with Ilya. Ilya is he's a mod in the Discord, but you and him would probably get along. I think. Anyways, go on.
cool. Yeah, no, I actually had a disagreement with Fabian Scott in another Discord because he's
No.
such a like
Oh,
ANCAP, like anti. Yeah, he's
that's
super like
right. You're right. You're right.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
yeah. So I was a bit aggressive with him, but that's kind of my mo is that in
Okay.
text I like to be really aggressive and provoke and try to trigger like an actual like
Ooh. You got
or
some
like
do you have
video.
some Fabian drama? You have some Fabian
Mm-mm,
drama? Tell me.
not really. We just had a
Okay.
disagreement. He thinks
Alright.
I think economics is emerging as a science, and I think the work that
Okay.
economists have been doing for the last like 10, 20 years makes
Okay.
it justifiably so.
Okay.
Um,
And you think his,
and
what is he pulling on? He's pulling on Mises, he's pulling on,
yeah, he
um,
says that it's
who's
not
the other
like
guy?
you can't Rothbard, probably Rothbard,
Uh, yeah,
or like Hans
Rothbard?
Hermann Hoppe.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah, there's Rothbard, there's Mises
Mises,
and,
Hayek.
Hayek. Yeah, that's the one I was looking for. Okay. Okay, that alright,
Hayek is a
alright.
little more like neoliberal, but yeah.
No, no, I'm familiar. I'm somewhat familiar with all this. I like honestly, I mean, to a certain extent, I like the Austrian way of thinking, but unfortunately, it's like your theory is good to certain systems, but those systems have to interact with the actual real world. So kind of impractical at this point. You know,
Yeah, the problem that I have with Austrians is that they're like anti-math, like anti-science. They would not, they refuse, and it's almost like they're just bad at like, critical analysis and math because they just refuse to acknowledge that there is incredible advancements, and it is so like anti-science, like anti-intellectualist. Because if you look at the way that I think about it is, if you look at math, physics, chemistry, and look at how things were in like Descartes' era, and
mhm,
look at what Descartes came up with and how influential he's been. Like Cartesian shit still influences us to this day. But if you look at the history, economics is young compared to all these other sciences. It is really like an actual like econometrics, like the math, the stats.
okay,
It's like a baby because in those earlier times of like physics, chemistry, et cetera, it's comparable, right? Like you had a ton of situations where people like physics people would come up with like crazy ideas that were people like Austrians or like ANCAPs would be like, no way, like you can't prove that, you can't prove a causality, blah blah blah, like whatever.
okay,
But like the work is like people. So the guys that won the Nobel Prize this year, Card, Angrist, and some other dude, I forget his name. All their work is there are now like tons of derivatives of their work, right? Like we are now standing on the shoulders of giants, as the saying goes. And I feel like it really, really grinds my gears because if somebody actually did honest, like objective investigation into economic research and like what it looks like these days, you'd see
Mhm,
that it meets all the criteria. Like it's super rigorous. You have to you have to actually be able to replicate things. And when something doesn't have a replication, you are like more like ethically obligated to write that shit in your like closing statement in the discussion. You have to say like, yeah, we had trouble replicating this, so we
mhm.
don't actually know like how true or like how right this is. Um, so like all the earmarks or like all the post signs of science are in economics right now. And it just really annoys me. So yeah, he got under my skin to some extent with that because I think it's people like plugging their ears and being like, la la la, no, it's a social science, like la la la, I don't care.
Okay, okay, it got to that point. Well, what do you want? It's a bit performative. People are argumentative. I tend to honestly, from the Austrians, I tend to like this idea of looking. I mean, you can see this in how I describe the other problem, right? But in looking at things like their organic systems, right? Like there's a there's a they're systems that emerge from human artifice, and they have some of our
Montreal
characteristics in them,
player, you're a
I
fucking
think,
cunt. I'm just
and I prefer to
saying.
look at things, a because I'm not going to do the math, okay, but I need a practical system to evaluate situations, right? And so yeah, in that way, I guess that's how I think about it, and I think that's heavily influenced from how I guess Austrian authors describe things, right? Because you're saying it's not mathematical, very it's not like data driven and stuff like that. So
Yeah, they don't
yeah,
like the idea that you can reduce because one of the things that like science will often do in order to understand something is
mm,
they'll reduce it to like a lowest common denominator almost. Not actually, but like it's reductive in some ways, right? Um, and like, they don't like that. They don't like that you could reduce, like, a rational actor to, like, a number in an equation, and
right.
that you can quantify, like, you every instead they wanna qualify everything. They wanna explain it through, like, philosophy and reasoning
Mm,
and things like that, whereas,
mm,
like, it's 2021 or 2022 now. Like,
mhm.
this is
Yeah,
super, like, antiquated.
well, I would do. Yeah, no, I know, but I mean, hold on. It depends which one works. Basically, it depends which one works to solve problems. Right?
Well,
I
I
mean,
guess, what I would
whoever gets
say
the
to that
lion's share of solving problems, I suppose, is a superior philosophy.
then it's hands down economics because when you look at a really good example that because I love her work a lot. There's an economist at Texas A&M University,
Mhm.
Jennifer Doliak. I might say her name wrong. I'm not sure. She works in law and crime, but she uses economic methods to do analysis of crime and like legislation and talks to a bunch of people. So it's not something in the actual economy, but it's using the methods from economics
Uh-huh.
to generate like causal like difference in difference, causal inferences,
Mhm.
and
Well,
show. Mhm.
let's say this discipline. Um, oh shit! I had a really good question and I fucking forgot it. You believe that shit? You believe that shit? I hate it. All right. I'll get it. I'll get it. Fuck.
You're
I'm
good.
sorry. I'm sorry. We'll get back
No
to it.
worries.
I'll think of it again.
Yeah, no problem. You know, I can fill the air a little bit with like more random shit about me. Um,
Yeah.
so
Go
one
ahead.
interesting thing is that I identify as like a paternalistic conservative, right? Like I have a
Oh
lot of
right. Yeah, yeah.
progressive.
Your
Yeah,
political label. I love it. Okay. Yeah. What is
yeah.
this?
So
All right.
paternalism is kind of like the best way to describe it is there's a French word called noblesse oblige, where it comes from the idea that aristocrats are obligated to give back to people that are worse off than them. And this spawned an idea that like a society should be structured paternalistically, that which means that the people that are better off need to like give back basically. And um, obviously we know that, and for the longest time they all know that like philanthropy is not exclusively enough, so it's not just the idea of philanthropy.
Mhm.
The British guy Benjamin Disraeli was kind of like the originator of real like paternalistic conservatism, and he was one of the British prime ministers that like made a lot of effort to help worker protections and worker rights, and other like progressive things for like the social strength or like social policies.
Mhm.
So it's not just philanthropy, it's also that you'd want to um, have strong pro-social institutions, like in whatever form that is, like either like worker protections, like like basically as a broad like abstract idea that ensure that people that are worse off in your country are not poorly off.
Mm, right. Do we have that attitude ourselves? I mean, do we care about? I find
Outside of
you
America, yes.
you could achieve. Okay. Well, anyways, you know what? You could. I'm not. That's a terrible way to start it. In my way to solve this problem that you're talking about, these pro-social institutions and what they're needed for, right, is to try to foster those relationships, but locally, right? Locally, you have enough manpower, okay, to handle some needs like this, right? To take care of people who are yeah, it's just, because what is labor and work and all that? It's just organizing people to do stuff, right? Organizing people to do stuff, and you have enough human resource in a relatively small but large area to do these things locally, and so a network of that I think would be more sustainable, honestly. But it's just you have to get people to do it. How do you mobilize them to do it? You know?
Well, the interesting is people that would be so to give you an example, right now in Nova Scotia, there's a conservative government, and the leader actually identifies in the same way that I do. He the party is the Progressive Conservative Party of Nova Scotia, but he buys into the old Canadian kind of conservatism that existed in like the eastern part of Canada for a really long time, which is exactly the same stuff. Because in his in the time that he's been in office so far, he's done more than NDP or Liberals have for people. Like there's increasing healthcare spending. They have a 5-year job guarantee for nursing graduates. They are doing a ton of shit for housing. Like it's just constantly like almost like every week you see some kind of news headline where he's like Houston approves this and it's like benefiting the people. Like there are tangible people that are not just rich people that are benefiting from some policy or action that he's taken. Like, and when he was first elected, he sent out these mandate letters, which are basically like his way of saying, like, all right, this is what I expect of my ministers. You guys have to do this on some kind of timetable, and we're going to start doing it. Like another example was he sent a mandate and letter out to the education minister, and the education minister is now like obligated to go around the province and actually go to the schools and talk to the principals. And like it's just um, from all that, what I'd say is everything you're proposing wouldn't be like the paternalistic conservatives would not be against that. You know, like I'm not against what you're suggesting because in my mind this is just a matter of the municipal government and like or like more local governments being in the same spirit and working with churches, with other organizations, and doing all coming together, like lift the lowest of their society up and leave things intact as they are. Just keep lifting the people up, keep elevating that quality of life for the people that are worst off in our society, and everything's good.
Hmm. Well, well, best of luck. Best of luck.
Yeah.
How are you? What's your? How do I say this? What can you do to solve this problem for yourself? Like, what do you contribute to
Um.
solving this problem?
Well, for me, I think as an individual,
Mhm,
um, my who knows where I'll be going after this degree. I'm mentally committed to doing either like a PhD or doing law school, and
mhm,
who knows like what direction that'll take me in. But in terms of like my own personal activism, like I do talk to my local representatives at times from the different parties as well. So I am involved on some level. I think that's like a key thing for everybody is I'm not saying that I'm like really well connected. I think majority of them are pretty easily approachable. But for me as like an individual with using the internet sphere as an example, my general purpose right now, even though this is super fun, like I love like arguing and debating and talking about
mhm.
shit because I learn like through
Yeah.
needing to research and defend my position, but
Okay.
also just explaining it to people makes me like think
Yeah,
more.
you like the mental exercise it gives you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
But also I have kind of a MO, and that's that I want to actually like increase the quality, even though like in some respect, like as I
Mhm,
just said, like blood sport, all this like debate stuff, super fun.
mhm.
But I still want that boring shit to take place on some level. I want to see people like do
Yeah.
more and better research, better discourse, better debate that actually leads to something.
Mhm.
And I learn with people, learn with
Hey,
everybody around me.
Victoria. Hey, Victoria. It's nice to see you. We're talking with Brys here, having a great economics conversation. I wish Ilya was here, honestly, but we'll send him. I'm going to give him the YouTube video to edit.
Oh, sweet.
What do you think about this? So Melissa here, she's in the chat. She watches my shows and stuff. All right, and sometimes she's the only one here, right? But she talks to me about this. I enjoy building this little thing, right? There are other people, Ilya, Heather, anyways. But so so that's it. But I've decided to give Melissa half my Twitch check because she watches Twitch for me. Honestly, there's a lot of people to watch. There's like drama going on. I'd like to know, but I don't watch Twitch that much because I'm fucking super busy and I can't, or else it's distracting. So, so
Yeah.
that's it. So I'm
No, it's
very
awesome.
grateful. I'm very grateful actually for all the support and that's it. Anyways,
No, yeah, that's
I,
cool. I think
it
that's
just
a
it's
cool
coming,
idea.
Melissa. I told PayPal to take the money, and it takes like 4 to 7 business days or something. So in the next week
Yeah,
or
it
something.
does.
Anyways,
It does
no,
take a few days.
put that back into your stream. It's fine. My stream's fine. I have to buy my own computer. I've got. Let me take care of the stream. All right, you're contributing to the stream. Okay. By doing what you do. And if Ilya does editing for me, he also says he doesn't want to get paid. Fuck you. I'm sending you money too. Okay. Everyone's getting paid for work that they do. Sorry. Uh,
No,
I
that's
said,
cool.
um,
Yeah, the other thing that comes to mind, with regards to the online sphere, what I would really like to do is also introduce the more like common interactions, the idea of like heuristics, right? There's a guy whose book I actually just got because it looks really, really like on point exactly with everything that I'm like feeling lately after talking to like on the online sphere so much in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, so this guy, Mark Kilman, he's the dean of Stanford Law or like a vice dean or something. And he wrote this book, like heuristic reasoning or something. And basically, I, I have some notes actually. I was looking at it. Um, people make decisions with the people make decisions and judgments using these heuristics because it's kind of like mental methods that are optimizing it, like unconsciously optimizing your brain's activity. Because
mhm,
if we went like if all of us went like purely objective, like perfectly like trial and error or some other like heuristic like that, the amount of time that it would take for all of our like actions and decisions and judgments would be insane. Like you take forever to get anything done, like
right.
crossing the street, like you
Yeah.
we rely on these, but the problem is that people do it in a lot of like important situations, like debates, like coming up with like what do I agree with philosophically.
Mhm,
And so I'd really like to introduce the idea that like people can look at the common types of heuristics and be like either aware of it as they're coming to um, different positions or preparing for a debate. Even
mhm.
I think that's a huge net benefit to broader like sphere, you could say.
Hmm.
Because like the great way to think about it is when people are using these heuristics, they're not necessarily using all of the information that's available to them because they're ciphering and it's not like a rational process. It's a largely like a biased process. Um, like rule of thumb is a great example of a really common heuristic. Um,
Mm.
and instead of
Okay, hold on. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, what's a yeah. Okay. Uh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah.
you don't need
Yeah.
to apologize.
No, I've lost it. It's that time. It's that time. We can go for another half hour. I can't stay on these things too long. It's true.
Yeah,
I can't. It's
you're
just
good.
that's just me. I want to blurt out some back and forth, and then but then I get lost in my own thoughts. Like
It's
something
okay.
you say like spins off some fucking idea. It's so strange, and I hate it. I hate it, but I can't be medicated at this hour, or else I'll have trouble sleeping later. You
Yeah,
know?
I get
Yeah.
that. No, I 100% understand. I've tried a few. I haven't taken any because I think
Mhm.
I manage okay on my own. But And I'm not saying that like there's just me personally. There's nothing wrong because I've tried the different medications. I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so it's just like if we can get into the habit of people being willing to experience that cognitive discomfort, like
mhm,
the sensation of cognitive dissonance, and like
okay,
avoid the traps of like confirmation bias, and avoid the traps that you can fall into with these heuristics, then for me that's a huge W. It doesn't matter if somebody comes up with
okay,
like some brilliant solution, the socialism, or
right.
yeah. Sorry, I was
So
like I'm the
don't
kind
you
of
think?
opposite. Like
Don't you think in that way Austrian economics is that's their mo?
no, because they specifically reject, like, science. They are literally like, "Fuck the scientific method," and, like, I feel like the scientific method is so foundational to our society, like, for many
Talk,
reasons, like
he's
Mhm.
talking shit on you Austrians. What are you gonna do?
True. Debate me. Like, I know I think that's probably what I'm gonna get to. Know a few people. I'm gonna try to set up some debates with, like, Fabian or, like, some ANCAPs or, like, socialists or, like, whatever,
You're right,
and,
but what battlefield are you fighting on if you debate someone like that? Like how who
um
will determine what is the correct or is the better argument?
An impartial moderator, hopefully. Somebody that can just see that, like, the soundness of arguments and the empirical backing of the sound
Mm,
arguments, that, like, everything kinda adds up,
okay.
the
Okay, so there
premises.
would have to be a judge. That's the thing. You know what I hate about debates on Twitch? Okay? It's just like
Mm.
it's posturing, right? But can we make this like a clear game that's not like just votes and fucking community numbers and stuff? Like, yeah, can we have like a fair and impartial I don't know. I feel like that would be a decent debate show. Like at the end there's a winner, you know?
Yeah, kinda like a yeah, I
That's
think
not based on fucking sorry, clout.
Mhm.
Yeah.
True. I think, the hippy dippy thing is probably on the right track. I think that you could look to existing debate formats and find something either new or adapt one of the existing systems. And yeah, you could because the like parliamentary style, like and like the world debate, whatever. They have like PDFs that you can download on like the rules and scoring systems. Like I remember sending one to Zanya, I think, a while
Yeah.
ago. So I mean, there are ways
Yeah.
that you can get around it, but yeah, it does require that somebody has to be.
It doesn't have
Um,
to be. It doesn't have the rules don't have to be fucking based in science or anything. It's just or some academic like whatever. It could just be like anything with clear rules because I don't know who wins. You know, in a debate, it's just
yeah,
people they go and then it's like okay, well, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I think that's the importance of like the heuristic stuff. Because if you, well, also I have a couple other things. Is that I side pretty closely with this guy W.K. Clifford. He wrote this paper called Ethics of Belief, and he was a big proponent of what's called evidentialism. When his quote is famously like, "Nobody should ever believe anything at any point ever without like, sufficient evidence," and that's like a philosophy of mine almost.
Okay,
But his quote is way better. Let me try to find it.
evidence in the form of numbers.
In some cases, yeah, I
Okay,
think it
but
sometimes
not in
you
all
don't all
cases. Okay,
no, not in all cases, but evidence nonetheless.
okay. What's a decent? I don't know. What's a decent piece of evidence?
Um, like like a
What's the
uh,
gold? What's the
hmm,
gold standard of evidence?
that's a really good question, actually. Um, Gold standard of evidence,
Yeah.
something, any kind of account, like any kind of empirical, um, it be a word or number, empirical support for some kind of premise that can withstand scrutiny.
Okay. Hmm. Hmm.
I'll just we can go back to that in a second, but the quote is, "It is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence." Which,
I don't think
to
so. I don't
clarify,
I
yeah,
I don't think that's
I'm
I
not
don't think that's
surprised.
true. I don't think that's true.
Then
Alright,
you'd
but go
probably
on, go
the
on.
guy that responded, yeah. Sorry, like I said, I'm the opposite of you. I tend to, like almost like a
Yeah,
professor style. Like I talk, and
sure,
my friends
sure,
make fun of it for me all the time.
don't worry about
Um,
it. Don't worry about it,
yeah.
please.
Uh, so William James, he wrote a response. The Will to Believe. These are some of like my favorite philosophy papers.
Mhm.
Um, and he argued that there are cases where you cannot have an obsessive pursuit of error or like error reduction, and that humans are like have passional minds is what he called it, and that like emotions influence our appraisal of like what is considered to be like evidence and
Mhm.
truth, and
Yeah.
that by having that like obsessive pursuit for like error reduction and like error checking, you set the standard that's like an unrealistic level because humans brains function differently, which I agree with the passional thing, but I actually wrote, so the paper that I wrote about all of this
Mhm.
is that I feel like both of them are right. So I feel like James is right because I think we do need an epistemic standard. We do need to have that belief that it's wrong to believe it on insufficient evidence, but obviously that um, James is right. We do have emotions, but we should try to be a conscious and aware of emotions, embrace it, but be aware of it when our emotions. Sorry, be aware of our emotions when it's a hindrance. It's okay to have emotions. I don't think everybody should be like Destiny and be have like a cold machine kind of approach to emotions, but um, yeah, just be able to know when like the emotion is like a hindrance. And
Hmm. Emotion might be telling you something about your environment that you can't quite understand. But
yeah,
anyways,
I mean,
uh,
look at the brain, like in the cognitive processes, right? You have information that goes into your brain through your sense perception,
yeah,
and then it is emotion and memory that all those things combined, like the
yeah.
processing of the sensory information and emotion and memory, all that are like the core ingredients of cognition.
You agree? You agree with what, Victoria? Be specific.
Oh,
Sorry, I
no, I
don't
do,
talk
but
to these people. I talk to people, and it's very nice. I'm glad I got to know you. This has been fun, right? But I don't know how to integrate my
yeah, it's been
chat
fun.
into this. They seem to like to just listen, so it's weird.
Um, from the 3 or 4 streams that I've done, yeah, trying to I don't think they mind, if it takes a while to respond to them or whatever, but,
Yeah.
um, yeah, just sometimes including them,
You
like,
see, Melissa,
answering
this
questions.
is why you see, Melissa, this is why I'm paying you. People come here to be with you. Do you realize that, Melissa? That English is too fancy for you. You're not following. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to pay attention to them once in a while. I feel bad. What am I streaming for?
Well, yeah, a lot of people do like that, where they can just like have you on as background audio or have like talk to themselves. Actually, this is a really good thing. Like having people like wholesome, like cool people like this, like Melissa and Victoria, just like talking amongst themselves and like creating that
Yeah, absolutely.
camaraderie between each other. That's a great thing.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Sorry, this is very cool to see you guys hanging out with each other. Anyways, yeah, that's it. You know what? I think we're done for
Yeah,
tonight. I think we're done for
cool.
tonight. Thank you very much. This has been fun. I wanna get you in a room with Touring News. I wanna get you in a room with Ilya. Okay, we'll talk again.
Sure.
We'll talk
Yeah,
again.
definitely. I'm down to talk to anybody. I don't plateau. I don't put anybody on a pedestal. I don't care if they're like a streamer or if it's just a chatter. Like I'll talk to anybody.
Alright. Oh wait, let's talk about this. Okay, tell people where to find you.
You can just find me at brys.live, brys.live. I stream. I forgot. I realized that I didn't really say this on the hippy dippy thing. I stream just like learning. Like I'm teaching myself Zettelkasten method for like note taking. So I'll try to like learn with the chat, and we all just do like really boring like education stuff and talk about
Okay.
all kinds of cool things.
Could I ask you? Could I give you a favor? Could you put a link to your stuff in the Discord
Yeah,
chat? And
sure.
yeah, okay. Thank you.